This is Jamey with Stonemaier Games, and today I'm going to talk about my favorite mechanism in one deck dungeon. I have some photos here because I played the digital version the other day. I have not played the tabletop version. But I did watch a video about how to play the tabletop version after I played the digital version to make sure that there weren't anything that that the digital version was making easier than it should have for me. The digital version is great, by the way. Basically, this is I believe it's a 1 to 2 player game. I played it just one player, where you are going through a dungeon, encountering different traps and creatures and enemies that you need to defeat to get to the end of the dungeon. It kind of reminded me of Slay the Spire, but a tabletop version of it. With some really interesting twists. And at its core, you are rolling some dice and placing those dice to determine whether or not you take any damage or not as you succeed through each of the encounters, the traps and the creatures. I'll come back to that in a second, but I went into the game wondering, like, okay, I'm just rolling some dice. Where are the decision points in this game? And there are actually a lot of really interesting decision points in the game. I want to highlight that now. One that I'll just show right away here. If you succeed on a mission, not on a mission, if you conquer a creature or get past a trap, you usually have a loot you can get. And this is one of the choices in the game. You get to choose which type of loot. You can get an item, which is effectively another die. It is another die. You can get XP, which increases, if you get a certain amount of XP, you increase your capacity, you increase your skills, or your capacity for skills. Or you can get a special skill that you can use once on your turn. So I really like this choice every time again, this reminded me a lot of Slay the Spire, in that when you defeat a monster, you get a choice here as to what you want to gain, how you want to improve. So there's always a sense of progression. I really like that also one of the other key choices in the game is you get to see the different traps and creatures before you are tied to actually doing anything with them. So you basically walk into a room on each level. You walk into a room and you flip over a card and it shows you either a monster or a trap. And you can decide, okay, I'm just going to walk right back out and find something else, or you can decide to deal with it right now. This is a simple choice. In the game that I played, I pretty much went for it right every time. But I think probably as I got more experience and as I leveled up and encountered more difficult monsters, I might say, okay, I'm not ready for this yet. I need to find something easier to take care of so I can level up and be ready for this more difficult monster. I think that's really, really important. My favorite mechanism in the game, now that I'm 3 minutes into this video, my favorite mechanism is that when you do go for a trap or a monster, you always succeed. And this may seem weird, right? Like in most other games, you would have a succeed or fail. But this ties into the progression in the game. You are always going to progress. You are always going to succeed. However, your choices, specifically where you place your dice on the monster, and if you are able to cover up all the spaces, determines which penalties you incur. So let's use this as an example. Put this right up at the screen. So say I'm able to cover all of these things. I have dice that equal the correct color of dice that equal to or greater than the numbers here. I cover all of them. That's awesome. I succeed. I go on. I don't take any damage. Don't use any extra time. However, say I can't cover this 3 and this 5. I cover all the other ones. I still succeed, but I have to use an extra time. That's my penalty for not covering it, and I lose 1 health for not covering this one. I still succeed. Say that I don't cover any of them. I still succeed. You still succeed the challenge. However, I would lose 3 time there and 5 health. So it would be really bad if that happened. I love this system because you're going into a fight, you're going to continue to move forward. There's no fail, there's no sense of failure, but there is a sense of kind of dread and fear and concern that ties back into the strategy because you have to decide, okay, I know I can't cover all of these things, but I can cover some of them. And which ones are more important to me right now? Is time more important? Am I running out of time? Is my health getting low? Do I need to focus on that? So you can decide what you really need to focus on if you can't use all your dice to cover all these slots on this monster or this encounter. Oh, that reminds me, there is actually one other thing. So I love this. I love this system. Really, really awesome skill test system. Probably one of the best. I have a video about my favorite skill test. This would instantly go in that top 10. I love it that much. One other thing I wanted to mention, one other interesting choice, is when you do encounter a trap, you are given 2 different ways to deal with it. One way takes more time and one way is more difficult. But I like that you have a choice there. You don't like. I think there was one where I encountered a door, and I could either bash through the door or I could pick the lock. Just simple choices like that that make it add a little extra theme to it and add a nice mechanical decision. What am I better at right now? Can I spare the time, or can I deal with a more difficult obstacle right now at this point in my journey? I would highly recommend trying this game. I think it does a lot of things that I really look for in dungeon crawlers, but it distills it down to a much more simplified game than you see in most dungeon crawl games. And yet the decision points and the mechanisms are brilliant. They're really, really cleverly put together. Really, really great. Especially if you do also like Slay the Spire, I would highly recommend checking out this, either the digital version or the tabletop version. That's One Deck Dungeon. If this reminds you of anything else, especially this always succeed but with penalties, with possible penalties, skill test mechanism, if you've seen that in other games, I'd love to hear other examples of this in other games. Yeah, those are my thoughts on this. I'd love to hear examples in the comments below if you can think of other games like that, or if you have a different favorite mechanism in One Deck Dungeon that you'd like to discuss below. Thanks.